So I've actually been writing down stuff from all of the books I read lately, just
Good.
because like we spoke about this briefly before, but I think it's so easy now to just consume content and forget about it, because
Mm.
majority of my day uh I'm consuming content. A majority of the average college kids, they're consuming content on their phone, on their laptop. Like most of the people you see around you are on some kind of screen. And honestly, that's made me start to hate my phone. Like I hate uh as as founder of a tech company, that's kind of a bad thing to say. But I I just think phones make everything too easy. Uh, but and that leads to your attention and your memory just regressing progressively as you use uh your phone and technology more and more. So uh yeah, one thing that I feel has helped me gain more from the books I read is writing down quotes and writing down things that I feel had an impact on me. uh I think you mentioned that you do this too. So like, do you have like a book where you write them down, or do you like write them down on your phone?
So I have a couple of things with that. I do a lot of highlighting, like in the
Yeah.
books. I read online. I have like a bunch of books in like my Google Play Books library where I could just like look at them and then like highlight stuff. You can
Mhm.
actually export the notes if you want to, but I'll also write down like quotes and stuff in like my notes app to like make sure I've got stuff as well. But I actually this is something very interesting because I've noticed that you've done a pretty good job of it as well, which is just like recalling the different quotes
Mhm.
without having this stuff up.
Yeah.
That's something that I worked on a whole bunch. I think it's just based on like reading a whole bunch of books and like learning things to where this actually comes from here's my recall in play.
Yeah.
But this comes from I heard it on Modern Wisdom podcast by Chris Williamson, and it
Mhm.
was Chris Williamson talking about a quote from Tim Ferriss, who was asked about how he was able to start like recalling things and how he didn't
Yeah.
understand it. And he just said that the good shit sticks
Mm.
in your mind. So whenever these things come up, that's why I think it's so important to like read something like the 48 Laws of Power or any of the other books that I've mentioned and read, because then you're able to connect that to different things, and then that's the times whenever stuff will just randomly come up. You'll think about it like randomly. Right now, I think of the book. It's called Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. There is a
Mhm.
quote in there that talks about urgency. Like it says, like urgency is upon you, and you need to like basically start doing stuff like now. That connects back to like a couple of other things. But I think in this sense, it talks more about how urgency is upon us to learn different things so that we're able to implement this stuff to improve ourselves later on.
Mhm.
Because by having that like delayed gratification in a sense where you read these books whenever it's harder for you rather than just going on your phone, which would be the
Yeah.
easier thing to do, then you're able to reap the benefits of being able to then lengthen your attention span and recall the stuff that you want later on.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, and and I think reading is, like, I feel like people are getting more into it now. Like I hear a lot more about people talking about reading and talking about books in general in college. Maybe that's the people I'm around, but uh I think towards the end of high school, I kind of just stopped reading because I was so focused on getting to college. I was focused on like myself, doing whatever I was doing, not really thinking about improving myself with knowledge. So maybe it's something that comes with age and maturity. Like the older you get, the more you want to make sure you're learning. Or do you think there's like a tipping point where you kind of plateau?
I think part of it comes down to like I'll give you an example from like a story for myself.
Mhm.
I think there's like sparks that like spark you to like go down a path of like self-improvement or like entrepreneurship or stuff like that. And usually what happens is it like comes with the learning aspect of stuff. So you almost like get I don't want to say like get forced into it, but like you naturally like start to flow of like learning and like books are there. So like for example, myself, we talk about like the phone stuff, which like I have my phone right here. A good way to like make sure you're better is like make sure your phone's in black and white,
Mm.
and like take off like most of the apps. That's what I'd say. But one of the things that I did a while ago, I deleted social media on my phone and like just cut it off for like an entire like year plus. I got it back like for around this podcast, like doing stuff as
Mm.
well with the business. But I put the Google Play Books app like in place of where Instagram was and took a bunch of the other stuff off. So I'd like swipe open and like go to Instagram and I'd click the books. So then it just made me start reading and I just started doing that stuff. So I'd recommend that for like anybody who wants to start reading. But
Mhm.
just telling myself like, all right, like now we're reading now because I have nothing better to do has made me like become more into actually reading. And sometimes, like I said, like I'll fall off with the reading as well. Like I
Yeah.
literally said, I made it through one chapter of the 48 Laws of Power, but then I'll also have times where, like yesterday, I sat there and pretty much just read .com secrets for like the entire time, like most of my day. So like I can go back and forth and do the stuff, but I think it's more of honestly with books, it's something that actually recall again.
Yeah.
My a buddy of mine who's on the podcast, Quentin, he was telling us about how he would put a book in the middle of his bed before he went to bed. He'd need to read this book and like
Mhm.
read at least one page of the book before he went to bed. And he couldn't do that if he couldn't go to sleep if he didn't move this book out of his bed and like read it. So just I think establishing like a routine, maybe not like exactly like that, but establishing a routine of reading can help us become like
Yeah.
smarter and like learn things, but then also just make it consistent. Like something that I implemented this year for myself. And I'm like not a huge fan of uh I'm not a huge fan of like New Year's resolutions. I think
Mhm.
that that's kind of dumb. Like I think that you should just start stuff like immediately. Like don't bother to wait.
Yeah.
But something I did actually wait for was implementing reading one page of the Daily Stoic. It's a book by Ryan Holiday every single day. It's
I've
literally
heard of
just
it.
one page for the day, and you just read that. And it's made me like I at least have some sort of sense of accomplishment whenever in the mornings I like meditate, journal, and then read the Daily Stoic. So I like have something like I've read some book. And
Yeah.
I feel like at least a little bit accomplished there. So just implementing stuff into the routine, like we were talking about with Atomic Habits, then you're able to build upon that stuff. And I've found success. I would just say like I said, like I just try things. I'm like not an expert by any means on
Mhm.
any of this stuff.
Yeah.
I'm just sharing random stuff that I've kind of thought is cool, and I'm gonna try like the waking up stuff that you said. But
Mhm.
I'd recommend at least trying some of the stuff for people.
Yeah. And like on the recall again, actually, I think like you said you only read half of Atomic Habits. I actually only read like 120 pages. But I think it's more about what you get out of it
Hmm.
than reading the whole book. Like you don't need to read the whole book just to say that you read it, because if you aren't gonna get anything more out of a non-fiction book, it's not like it's telling you a story that you need to know the ending.
Hmm.
Like I think you should stop reading it when it stops helping you. Honestly, uh, so yeah, that's how I feel about books in general.